backlit by moonlight. Tank. Behind him, the rumble of idling motorcycles. In front of him, a man stumbling backward, knocking over a folding table, cash scattering like leaves in a storm. Vernon Cross, 53 years old, gold watch, expensive boots, and a face twisted with something he hadn't felt in years. Terror. But to understand how Vernon lost everything, his money, his operation, his power, we need to go back 48 hours, to a ditch on Miller Road, and a dog that refused to die. The warehouse smelled like rust and fear. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Rows of cages lined the walls. Inside them, dogs. Pit bulls mostly. Scarred. Skeletal. Some paced in tight circles. Some pressed against the wire, shaking. One lay motionless in the corner of its cage. Too still. Vernon Cross sat at a folding table in the center of it all, counting money. 50s, hundreds, stacked thick. He licked his thumb, flipped another bill. Never once looked at the cages. To Redwood County, Vernon was a respectable man. Season tickets to the college games, a brother-in-law on the city council, a firm handshake and a friendly smile. But Vernon's real business didn't happen in daylight. A handler dragged the limping pit bull toward the back door. The dog's rear leg hung wrong. Broken. Useless. Its claws scraped against the concrete. A weak whine escaped its throat. Vernon didn't look up. "Dump it in the usual ditch," he said, "and make sure it's dead this time. Last one crawled to the road, had to answer questions." The handler hesitated at the door. Vernon finally glanced up. "What? You want a ceremony? It's a dog, not your grandmother." He chuckled at his own joke, then went back to counting. "These ain't pets," Vernon said to no one in particular. "They're product. And product that don't perform gets recycled." Recycled. That was his word for it. Like they were soda cans, like they were cardboard boxes, like they weren't living things that felt pain, that felt fear, that felt hope, until Vernon took it from them. In a cage at the back of the warehouse, a gray pit bull with a torn ear stared at nothing. Cigarette burns dotted his rib cage like a constellation of cruelty. His breathing was shallow, rattling. His name was Soldier. Not that Vernon knew. Not that Vernon cared. Soldier had maybe 3 fights left in him, maybe 2. Then he'd take the same ride to Miller Road, same ditch, same ending. That was the plan. But plans have a way of changing. Dawn. Golden light cutting through morning fog. A rural road with weeds pushing through cracked asphalt. Maya walked along the shoulder. 16 years old, hoodie pulled up, backpack slung low, taking a shortcut home after a long night. She stopped, looked down into a shallow ditch. Her face changed. Horror first, then something harder. Determination. Soldier lay in the mud, gray fur matted with blood, ribs showing through skin. Cigarette burns visible in the early light. He wasn't moving. Then, a twitch. One ear, barely there. He was alive. Maya slid down into the ditch. Her hands shook as she touched his side, feeling for breath, for heartbeat, finding both, barely. "Hey," she whispered. "It's okay. I got you." She pulled off her hoodie, wrapped it around him, lifted him into her arms. He weighed nothing, just bones and breath and burn marks. Maya had heard rumors. Everyone in Redwood County had. About a place you go when the cops won't help, when the system fails, when you've got nowhere left to turn. A garage on the edge of town. They called it the Forge. She didn't know if the stories were true. She didn't know if they'd help. But she knew one thing. Whoever did this was still out there, and the police hadn't done a thing about it. 6 months of complaints. 6 months of nothing. So she walked toward the sunrise, soldier cradled in her arms, heading for the only place left, and she prayed someone was listening. The Forge smelled like motor oil and cigarette smoke, grease-stained concrete, chrome catching dusty light, old leather chairs arranged in a loose circle, decades of hard living soaked into every surface. Preacher sat in the center chair, polishing the chrome on his Harley with slow, deliberate strokes. His face was weathered. His eyes were ancient. He didn't look up when Maya walked in. Jedediah Stone. They called him Preacher, not because he quoted scripture, because when he spoke, people listened, like their souls were on the line. Maya stood in a shaft of dusty light, soldier still in her arms. She was shaking, from exhaustion, from fear, from hope. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. Preacher's hand paused on the chrome. He looked up. His eyes found the dog first, then the girl. He said nothing, just waited. So Maya told him everything. The warehouse 3 blocks from her apartment. The screaming she heard at night. Dogs fighting. Dogs dying. The ones that disappeared. The ones that got dumped. She told him about calling the cops, about the detective who said they'd look into it. That was 6 months ago. "Vernon Cross runs it," Maya said. "His brother-in-law is a councilman. Nobody touches him. Nobody cares." Heavy footsteps behind her. The creak of a door. Tank walked in. 6'4", 260 pounds. Hands like sledgehammers. A beard that hadn't seen a razor in weeks. Marcus Gallo, Sergeant at Arms. They called him Tank because that's what he was. A weapon with a heartbeat. Most people looked at Tank and saw a monster. But monsters don't cry. Tank stopped mid-stride, his eyes locked on Soldier. Something shifted in his face. The hardness cracked, just for a second. He crossed the room, slow, his boots echoing on concrete. He crouched down beside Maya, this massive man, suddenly gentle. His scarred hands reached out, touched the cigarette burns on Soldier's ribcage. His breathing changed, heavier, controlled. "Cigarettes," Tank said. His voice was flat. He put cigarettes out on this dog. Not a question, a verdict. Tank had a rule. You could hurt him. You could insult him. You could spit in his face, and he'd probably just laugh. But children and animals? That was the line. Cross it, and something inside Tank turned off. The part that negotiates. The part that shows mercy. Tank looked at Preacher. Their eyes met. A conversation without words. Maya started to give the address. She didn't get to finish. Preacher stopped polishing, set down the rag, looked at Tank. One slow nod. That was it. The nod. In the Forge, it meant something sacred. It meant a cause was righteous. It meant the hunt had begun. It meant Vernon Cross had just run out of time. Tank took Soldier from Maya's arms. The dog weighed maybe 40 pounds. Nothing to Tank. But he held him like Soldier weighed everything, like he was made of glass. He didn't hand the dog off, didn't pass him to anyone else. He carried Soldier himself, to a blanket in the corner, to a bowl he filled with his own hands. Tank, on his knees, this mountain of a man, setting down a broken dog like he was the most precious thing in the world. Soldier's tail moved, just a twitch, almost nothing. Maya watched. She'd expected anger. She'd expected violence. She hadn't expected this. Tenderness from a man built for war. "Will he be okay?" she asked. Tank didn't look up. "He'll live," he said. "That's the first promise." He stood, his face hardened again. The gentleness was gone, replaced by something colder, more focused. "The second promise is about the man who did this." Night. Vernon's warehouse. The fluorescent lights joined by strings of work lights. Makeshift spotlights pointed at a plywood pit in the center. Blood stained the carpet. A crowd of lowlifes, 30, maybe 40, exchanging cash, drinking from paper bags, jostling for position around the pit. 2 dogs circled each other inside, scared, scarred, forced to fight. Vernon stood ringside. His gold watch caught the light. He was explaining something to a newcomer, young guy, nervous, first time. "This ain't cruelty," Vernon said. "It's nature, survival of the fittest. I'm just the—" He stopped. His head turned toward the warehouse windows. Headlights swept across the dirty glass. 1 pair, then 2, then 5, then more. The crowd went quiet. The dogs stopped barking. Just the engines now, circling like sharks. Vernon's smile flickered. For the first time in years. Doubt. He'd ruled this corner of Redwood County for 8 years, survived police investigations, survived angry neighbors, survived competitors who wanted his operation. But he'd never heard this sound before. The sound of something that couldn't be bought, couldn't be threatened, couldn't be stopped. Some of the crowd started edging toward the exits, the smart ones. Vernon's smile returned, forced, false. "Relax," he said. "It's just some bikers, probably lost." Nobody looked convinced, including Vernon. The Iron Sentinels rode in formation through the industrial district, Tank at the front, his face carved from stone. Behind him, 6 riders, no patches visible, just black leather and chrome. They didn't speed. They didn't need to. Vernon wasn't going anywhere. He just didn't know it yet. The bikes circled the warehouse block, slow, deliberate, patient. Inside, Vernon barked orders. "Jimmy, check the door!" Jimmy, wiry, nervous. He cracked the warehouse door, peered out, saw the bikes circling. He came back, pale, shaking. "Vernon, there's like 10 of them. Big ones." "So?" Vernon laughed. "It's bikers. What are they going to do, rev at me?" The laugh echoed in the warehouse. Nobody joined him. Vernon checked his phone. No signal. Someone had cut the repeater on the telephone pole outside. He reached for the gun he kept under the cash table. It wasn't there. His hand patted empty space. His face changed. His handlers exchanged looks. One was already edging toward the back door. They were already inside his head, inside his operation, and they hadn't even walked through the door yet. Tank rolled to a stop outside the warehouse, killed his engine. The other Sentinels formed a line behind him, Engines off. Silence. Tank sat on his bike, staring at the warehouse door, waiting. Inside, Vernon paced, sweating, his gold watch catching the light with every nervous gesture. "Somebody tell me what's happening," he demanded. "Maybe we should pause things for tonight," one handler offered. "Pause?" Vernon's voice cracked. "We've got 30 people here. We've got money on the table." The crowd was thinning, people slipping out back doors, through windows. The rats knew when to leave the ship. Vernon was still rearranging deck chairs. Outside, Preacher appeared beside Tank. He didn't sit on a bike. He stood, arms crossed, watching. "No blood on your hands tonight," Preacher said. His voice was quiet, final. "Just break what he built." Tank didn't look at him, didn't answer. He was already swinging off his bike, already walking toward the door. Preacher's rules were clear. The Sentinels didn't kill. They didn't need to. Death was easy. Living with nothing, no money, no power, no protection. That was harder. That was the punishment. Tank heard the rules. Whether he'd follow them tonight, that was another question. The door exploded inward. Tank's boot. The remaining crowd scattered, men diving over each other, handlers running. Someone crashed through a window, glass everywhere. Fight or flight. Nature's oldest choice. Every man in that warehouse chose flight. Every single one. Because they looked at the door, and they saw Tank. And their bodies made the decision before their brains could argue. Tank walked through the chaos like it wasn't there. Men bounced off him. He didn't notice. His eyes were locked on the cages. Vernon backed toward his cash table, knocking things over, his gold watch swinging. "You can't be here," Vernon shouted. "I know people. My brother-in-law is—" He walked to the first cage, grabbed the padlock, ripped it off with his bare hands, metal screaming. A scarred pit bull bolted from the cage, ran for the broken door. Freedom. Then another cage, another lock torn free, another dog running. Tank didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Every cage he touched was a promise. Every lock he broke was a statement. You treated them like property. Now they're free. And you're next. Tank moved through the warehouse, methodical, relentless. Cage after cage falling apart in his hands, dogs streaming out into the night. Some limping, some running full speed, all of them heading for the open door. 15 dogs, 20, 25. 8 years of Vernon's product, walking out the door in 5 minutes. Vernon grabbed a handler's arm. "Do something! Stop him!" The handler shook free, ran, didn't look back. Tank found the fighting pit. Plywood walls, blood-stained carpet. He grabbed the edge, flipped the entire thing. 300 pounds of plywood and posts, like it weighed nothing. Then he started tearing it apart, board by board, his hands bleeding. He didn't slow down. The pit where dogs fought and died for Vernon's profit. The altar to his greed. Tank tore it apart with his bare hands. His hands bled. He didn't care. Because pain was nothing compared to what those dogs had felt. Tank stood before the cash table. Stacks of money. Thousands of dollars. Vernon's entire operation right there. He picked up a jerry can. The red kind. The kind you keep gasoline in. "Wait!" Vernon screamed. "We can talk about this! We can make a deal!" Tank opened the can, poured gasoline over the cash. Slow, deliberate. The money darkened, soaked through. $57,000. Vernon's retirement fund. His safety net. His proof that crime paid. Tank pulled a match from his pocket, struck it on his belt buckle. "That's everything I have," Vernon said. His voice broke. Tank looked at him, eyes dead, certain. "I know." He dropped the match. The cash ignited, flames consuming $57,000. Vernon's face illuminated by the fire. Destroyed. Vernon watched his life savings curl into ash. Every dirty dollar he'd made off suffering. Gone. Smoke and memory. Preacher stood at the warehouse entrance, arms crossed, silent sentinel, blocking any escape. Behind him, the freed dogs disappeared into the night like ghosts. Vernon lunged at Tank, a wild swing, sloppy, panicked. Tank caught his fist like swatting a fly. One hand. Didn't even blink. Vernon had never thrown a real punch in his life. He'd always had people for that. Now those people were gone. And all Vernon had left was Tank's attention. Tank lifted Vernon by the collar, one-handed. Vernon's expensive boots dangled. His gold watch swung. Tank's face, inches from Vernon's, fire dancing in his eyes. "Call your connections," Tank said. "Tell him you're retired." Vernon's mouth. Nothing came out. "Or I come back." Tank leaned closer, a whisper now. "And next time, I won't be so gentle with your property." He opened his hand. Vernon dropped. He crumpled into the ash, sobbing. His gold watch hit the floor. He didn't reach for it. He was done reaching for things. "You can't," Vernon whimpered. I He had nothing. He was nothing. 8 years of cruelty ended in 8 minutes. And Vernon Cross finally understood. Some debts can't be paid with money. Some debts get paid in ash. Morning. Golden light. The forge. Maya sat on the concrete floor, her back against an oil drum. Soldier lay beside her, his head in her lap, eating from a bowl for the first time in days. Slowly, carefully, like he'd forgotten how. His tail moved, just a twitch. Then again, stronger. They say dogs don't smile, but when Soldier looked up at Maya with his one good eye, it looked a lot like a smile. Tank sat nearby on a crate, wrapping bandages around his torn hands. Dried blood, split knuckles. He didn't wince, just wrapped, methodical. "Is he gone?" Maya asked. "The man?" Turbulence Kent kept rapping. Didn't look up. "His operation is, he's got nothing now. No dogs, no money, no power." Blurred silence. Just Soldier eating. Maya's hand on his scarred head. "What happens to Soldier?" Tank stopped rapping, looked at the dog. The dog looked back. Something passed between them. Recognition. 2 soldiers. 2 survivors. "He stays," Tank said. "We got room." Vernon's warehouse at dawn. Golden mother and verses to the barm-villing system of his back that believes the noom was over and longed. Vernon's warehouse, what prefer their destruction? Cages ripped open. The fighting pit in splinters. Ash where the cash used to be. A war zone. A neighbor walked her dog past the scene. Stopped. Stared. A news van pulled up. Cameras rolling. A reporter stood in front of the wreckage. Behind her, Vernon Cross in handcuffs. Broken. Disheveled. His gold watch gone. Vernon never made another phone call to his brother-in-law. Hard to ask for favors when you're explaining why police found 4 firearms and enough evidence to bury you for a decade. Funny how evidence appears when someone wants it found. The Forge. Tank walking toward his bike. Morning sun behind him. He swung his leg over the Harley. On the back, a makeshift carrier. Blankets, straps, secure. Soldier's face. Scarred. Burned. Beautiful. Peeking out from the carrier, his one good eye watching the world. Not scared anymore. Tank kicked the starter. The law couldn't touch Vernon Cross. But karma? Karma.